This insignia is proudly worn by the 4th Infantry Division, also known as the Fighting 4th. In 2 world wars, the 4th has been in the forefront of action. Today, the distinctive ivy leaf patch is prominent in our effort to prevent a 3rd global conflict. This issue of The Big Picture will review not only the magnificent combat record of the 4th, but also its current role as a component of STRAC, the Strategic Army Corps. You will see how the tough and ready battle groups of the 4th Division today range farther and faster than any before to meet the threat of aggression.
The United States Army presents The Big Picture, an official report produced for the armed forces and the American people.
The 4th is based at Fort Lewis in western Washington state. But as a STRAC unit, it is ready to move if called upon to any part of the globe, the entire division, or any of its component parts. STRAC is the United States Army's answer to brush fire trouble spots, to the need for quenching such fires before they spread. The nucleus of the Strategic Army Corps consists of 3 crack divisions: 82nd Airborne, 101st Airborne, and the 4th Infantry. To create and maintain a crack outfit takes long and intensive training, modern weapons, a deeply felt sense of purpose, good leaders and men. The men of the 4th, many of them volunteers, know that they may be called upon for crucial duty without warning. They take their responsibility seriously. For them, rigorous training is a way of life. Due to the nature of STRAC's mission, the soldiers of this division must be ready to cope with any situation. Amphibious assault, mountain fighting, desert warfare, jungle operations. They must be ready for anything, and ready now. As an element of STRAC, they have been called the best trained, best informed, and most effective soldiers anywhere in the world. Because speed is essential to STRAC's mission, the emphasis is on mobility. They are ground soldiers who know the utility of air. They are drilled to get there first with the most. These soldiers give the answer to talk that this generation of Americans is growing soft. To all these qualities that make up a crack outfit, there is usually one other: tradition. Since its beginning, the Ivy Division has always been asked to do the hardest jobs. The division was formed at Camp Green, North Carolina in December of 1917. 6 months later, the Ivy men were over there in France. They were part of the counterweight that would swing the pendulum in the long, indecisive conflict to its final decision. In midsummer, they moved to the front to forge history. fought the Second Battle of the Marne at Chateau Thierry, Saint-Mihiel, Verdun, in the Argonne Forest. In 69 days of combat, the 4th took 1/20th of all battle casualties of the AEF. It met and helped to defeat 16 German divisions and received battle honors for 5 campaigns. Then the 4th marched off for 7 months of occupation duty. In the 20 months of its existence, the division left an imprint of valor that would not be forgotten. Out of the ashes of World War I, the Nazis vowed to build a Third Reich to last 1,000 years. These were the Carpenters. With stunning speed, the Nazi machine overran Poland, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, Paris, in June 1940, when no one knew where the Nazi tide would crest, the unit that would first puncture the Nazi homeland was reactivated at Fort Benning, Georgia. Ahead for the 4th lay months, years of reorganization and training. The division, like the nation, had to prepare to meet a new kind of threat, to fight a new kind of war. This was the beginning. In July 1942, the division was pulled out of the mammoth Carolina maneuvers and alerted for overseas. Instead, the men were sent to more training. At Camp Gordon Johnston on Florida's Gulf Coast, they received painstaking instruction in a new technique, amphibious assault. By now, other American outfits had fought in North Africa, in Sicily. Mussolini had fallen, Italy surrendered, and still the 4th trained on friendly beaches. These men could not know that the gap was closing between them and a day not yet on their calendars, an hour not on the clocks. D-Day, H hour. After final preparation and staging in England, the 4th Division learned what all the training was for. The greatest invasion armada in history was to storm Fortress Europe. The 4th was one of 2 American spearheads. Ultimately, the total effort of a combat machine is concentrated at the cutting edge. The spearhead must be so hard that it will not blunt, so resilient that it will not crack, and it must endure. To paraphrase a famous statement of the time, much had been given to the 4th Division in preparation. Now much would be asked. The time is D-Day, June 6th, 1944, H hour. For the Third Reich, the hour is late. The division's 8th Regiment put the first troops ashore at Utah Beach. It was a model landing at Utah, achieving immediate success at minimum cost in casualties. The troops pushed inland quickly. One immediate objective was to reach isolated 82nd Airborne paratroopers who controlled a beachhead artery at San Mary Glees, 6 miles away. By the end of the second day, the 4th had carried out its first critical assignment. We had a beachhead. Now we needed a port. The division's assignment: expand the beachhead and secure the vital port of Cherbourg. Now it was bitter going. The intermediate towns fell despite tenacious and costly enemy resistance. By the last week in June, the 4th was in Cherbourg. While it cleaned out the last Nazi pockets, engineers at once began restoring the port city. Was essential. General Patton's swift striking Third Army had to be brought in through here and assembled. The 4th was assigned to pave the way for the buildup, to clear the Cotentin Peninsula. The assignment had a built-in obstacle course. Hedgerows, they were called. They divided farm plots about every 100 yards. Frenchmen built them, Germans used them. Americans had to take them. By the last week in July, the Nazis were out of the peninsula and the Third Army was in it, waiting to break out. The whole was to be made somewhere along the Saint-Lô line with a powerful assault by the First Army. The 4th Division was one of the spearheads. The breakout operation began with a saturation aerial bombardment. One Ivy regiment moved out at H hour. This was 7 weeks, 4.5 hours after the landing in Normandy. Until this moment, Allied gains had been limited and expensive. Now we were going for all of France. The enemy knew what was at stake and fought fanatically. But by the end of a week, his line was fractured and the Third Army began rolling south. The 4th's 22nd Regiment received a presidential citation for opening up the Nazi lines. At the same time, strategic Villedieu fell to the division. The drive was picking up momentum now. We were picking up more information about the recently departed Nazis. Villedieu was a geographical key in demolishing the Nazi defense system. One final stronghold remained for the 4th, Saint-Poix. Even as this spearhead division passed through towns, the GIs saw the transformation taking place. Signs went quickly. They were no longer needed. The Germans were gone. They weren't coming back. Down swastika, up tricolor. After one desperate counterattack, Nazi resistance faded and the way was open all the way to Paris. With the 2nd French Armored Division, the 4th was ordered to liberate the city. For these visitors, the heady experience of transforming captive Paris to gay Paris. The 4th 12th Regiment entered Paris at midnight. By noon, it had reached the heart of the city and the hearts of its people. One trouble with spearheads, they don't linger for victory parades. They move on. From Paris, the advance was breathtaking. 50 miles and more some days across northern France and Belgium. All the while, everyone wondered, just how tough is the vaunted Siegfried Line? A 4th Division patrol was the first Allied unit to set foot on Nazi Germany. The time is September 11th. The next day, the division crossed the frontier in force and soon had bucked into the Siegfried Line. However, it developed that the full strength of the First Army was needed. Early in November, the 4th pushed into the Hürtgen forest, new terrain for the veterans of the beachhead and hedgerows. The Hürtgen was a maze of ridges and Nazi defense lines. After 19 days of bitter fighting, the division rammed through to the other side. The IV men moved on to Luxembourg, just as the Nazis burst through in their desperate Ardennes offensive. The German assault slammed into 4 isolated companies of the 12th Regiment. Beyond them was a treasure house of supplies and the roads to France. But the 4th Division units held firm, then counterattacked. Then it became a matter of shrinking the bulge. After the Nazis' last desperate bid crumbled, the 4th joined in the final assault on Germany. Its advance turned to pursuit. It pierced across the Rhine to Würzburg and Rüttgen. Then it struck southeast to the Danube. Then on to Munich. The spearhead was 6 miles from the Austrian border on VE Day. The famous 4th returned to the United States, and with the end of World War II was deactivated. Its contribution to victory and peace would not soon be forgotten. The emergence of a hard peace and a deeply troubled world eventually would require the 4th again to serve its country's call. The 4th was reassigned to Fort Lewis. Here in 1958, the Ivy Division was selected as a component when STRAC was formed. Today, the 4th is ready for any emergency.